Hello BookTube, Books with Bangs back again with another Malazan scene-specific analysis video. Today we'll be looking at yet another scene from Reaper's Gale, Book 7 in Stephen Erickson's Malazan Book of the Fallen. This scene happens roughly 3/4 of the way through the book, so there will be heavy spoilers up to that point. At least as far as the Sengar family storylines are concerned. If you are just now stumbling onto this series of mine for the first time, I have a whole One Beautiful Scene playlist and series going on my channel in which I've analyzed moments from books 1 through 7 now. If you're curious about any of those scenes or any of those books, what I have to say about them, or maybe if you're at an earlier point in the series and you don't want anything past that point spoiled, I highly recommend going over there and checking out those other scene analysis videos. All that said, let's get into it. So, setting the scene, I'm going to be reading from the end of chapter 18, pages 844 to 847 in this one, the mass market paperback. First, what's happening with the main character of the scene, at least, is Rhulad Sengar. He still rules as the Emperor of Lether, and he's sitting on his throne in the capital city of Letherus, currently threatened by flooding, a rising water table, elder gods and ascendants bickering on the streets and in the sewers, inquisitors torturing and terrifying the masses, and of course there's also reports of an invading army coming from the west, an army featuring some of our favorite characters, by the way, but so on and so on, all of these pressures weighing on Rhulad Sengar's mind. Also, it's important to note that Rhulad Sengar, bitter, cruel, mad, and distrusting of everyone, earlier in this book, he had his parents chained up in dungeons below the palace. So, here we go. In the throne room of the eternal domicile, Rhulad Sengar, Emperor of 1,000 Deaths, sat alone, sword in one hand. In wavering torchlight he stared at nothing. Inside his mind was another throne room, and in that place he was not alone. His brothers stood before him, and behind them his father, Tomad, and his mother, Uruth. In the shadows along the walls stood Udinaeus, Nisal, and the woman Rhulad would not name, who had once been Fear's wife. Fear is one of Rhulad's brothers, for context if you're not too familiar. And, close to the locked doors, one more figure, too lost in the dimness to make out, too lost by far. Benedas bowed his head, one of his brothers. Benedas bowed his head. "I have failed, Emperor," he said. "I have failed, my brother." He gestured downward, and Rhulad saw the spear transfixing Benedas's chest. The Toblakai, ghost of our ancient wars after the fall of the Ketra. Our wars on the seas, he returned to slay me. He is Karsa Orlong, a Teblor, a Tarthano Toblakai, Tarthanol, Fen. Oh, they have many names now, yes. I am slain, brother, yet I did not die for you. Benedas looked up then and smiled the dead man's smile. Karsa waits for you. He waits. Fear, another brother, Fear took a single step forward and bowed. Straightening, he fixed his heavy gaze on Rhulad, who whimpered and shrank back into his throne. Emperor, brother, you are not the child I nurtured. You are no child I have nurtured. You betrayed us at the spar of ice. You betrayed me when you stole my betrothed, my love, when you made her with child, when you delivered unto her such despair that she took her own life. As he spoke, his dead wife walked forward to join him, their hands clasping. Fear said, "I stand with Father Shadow now, brother, and I wait for you." Rhulad cried out, a piteous sound that echoed in the empty chamber. Troll, the third brother, Troll, his pate pale where his hair had once been, his eyes the eyes of the shorn, empty, unseen by any, eyes that could not be met by those of any other Teist Edor, eyes of alone. He raised the spear in his hands, and Rhulad saw the crimson gleam on that shaft, on the broad iron blade. I led warriors in your name, brother, and they are now all dead. All dead. I returned to you, brother, when Fear and Benedas could not. To beg for your soul of old, Rhulad, for the child, the brother you had once been. He lowered the spear, leaned on it. You drowned me, chained to stone, while the Rhulad I sought hid in the darkness of your mind, but he will hide no longer. All right, so brief pause here. Notice how in these mad imaginings of Rhulad, this depressing daydream of his. He's projecting his loneliness that opened the scene. He projects that onto Troll, for whom he might feel most guilty about, at least among all of the family and friends he has hurt and has abandoned or felt abandoned by over the course of the last long few days, as Troll did come back for him. And all of his mad, sort of ridiculous reasons for distrusting people, maybe he was much too hasty. I mean, he was hasty with all of them, and cruel to all of these people in this room. But maybe he feels the worst about how he's treated Troll, at least up to this point. I'll continue on, and you'll see kind of where we're going from here. From the gloom of the doors, the vague figure moved forward, and Rhulad on his throne saw himself, a youth, weaponless, unblooded, his skin free of coins, his skin smooth and clear. "We stand in the river of Sengar blood," Troll said, "and we wait for you." "Stop!" Rhulad shrieked. "Stop!" "Truth," said Udinaeus, striding closer, "is remorseless." "Master? Friend?" The slave laughed. "You were never my friend, Rhulad. You held my life in your hand. Either hand, the empty one or the one with the sword, makes no difference. My life was yours, and you thought I had opened my heart to you. Errant, take me. Why would I do that? Look at my face, Rhulad. This is a slave's face, no more memorable than a clay mask. This flesh on my bones, it works limbs that are naught but tools. I held my hands in the sea, Rhulad, until all feeling went away, all life gone from my once defiant grasp." Udinaeus smiled. "And now, Rhulad Sengar, who is the slave?" Quick pause there just to point out how Rhulad, being trapped so, he is easily one of the most heartbreaking and tragic characters of the series, and someone who he once thought of as friend was really just friend out of circumstance. This Udinaeus character, also who happens to be one of my favorites, but for Rhulad to be thinking these are the insults and the critiques that this friend of his would throw back at him, is just this heartbreaking level of self-hate and self-awareness. Because remember, all of these people talking, this is Rhulad kind of talking to himself, imagining what they would be saying to him, throwing everything that he's done to them back at him, laying it all kind of at his feet for him to deal with. Just really breaks your heart. Anyway, "I stand at the end of the chains, the end but one. One set of shackles. Here, do you see? I stand and I wait for you." Nisal spoke, gliding forward naked, motion like a serpent's in candlelight. "I spied on you, Rhulad, found out your every secret, and I have them with me now, like seeds in my womb, and soon my belly will swell, and the monsters will emerge, one after another, spawn of your seed, Rhulad Sengar, abominations one and all. And you imagine this to be love? I was your whore. The coin you dropped in my hand paid for my life, but it wasn't enough. I stand where you will never find me. I, Rhulad, do not wait for you." Alright, so here we get some more coin symbolism. It was the coins that turned Rhulad into a monster, at least physically, and now his former concubine, Nisal, she's cruelly teasing him by bringing up more of his horrible fears, like the fear that any child of his could only be monstrous, would have no choice but to be this twisted, corrupt creature. Here we go, this next part of Rhulad's mad internal vision, or actually, before we go on to that next part, I do want to point out, just structurally, the way that a lot of this is done is you get like these long paragraphs, then a short sort of like kind of period sentence, then a short sort of like kind of thesis or conclusion paragraph, just to really put a nail in, or like put a final note on everything that all of these characters have to say to him. So if you really wanted the gist of how terrible Rhulad feels about each of these people he's wronged, you could go through and read just those sentences. Granted, you don't get a lot of the context in these above big paragraphs, but I mean, you can see there are Udinaeus's, and then the quick thing, Nisal's, and then the quick thing that happened on the page before with Benedas and Fear and Troll as well. Really fascinating structure stuff that I'm really glad Erickson chose to kind of employ that technique with this passage. It helps things move along in a really organized, clear way, which I imagine could be difficult to convey when you're telling a highly figurative, or when you're writing about a highly figurative scene where everything that's going on, or almost everything that's going on, is all internal and imagined by Rhulad. Anyway, now we can move on. This next part of Rhulad's internal vision, all the loss and pain in his life and everything that he's caused, all the loss and pain he's caused. Now he's flinging everything back at himself, all of what he's inflicted on others. This next part literally had me in tears for a good while after the first time I read it, and I'm honestly getting a little emotional just thinking about it now. But here we go. Remaining silent, then, at the last, his father, his mother. He could remember when last he saw them, the day he had sent them to dwell chained in the belly of the city. Oh, that had been so clever, hadn't it? But moments earlier, one of the Chancellor's guards had begged audience, a terrible event to relate. The Lethary's voice had quavered like a badly strung lyre, tragedy, and error in rotation among the jailers. A week passing without anyone descending to their cells. No food, but, alas, plenty of water. A rising flood, in fact. My emperor, they were drowned. The cells, chest deep, sire, their chains. Not long enough. Not long enough. The palace weeps, the palace cries out, the entire empire, sire, hangs its head. Chancellor Tribunal is stricken, sire, taken to bed, unable to give voice to his grief. Rhulad could stare down at the trembling man, stare down, yes, with the blank regard of a man who has known death again and again, known past all feeling, and listen to these empty words, these proper expressions of horror and sorrow. And in the Emperor's mind there could be these words. I sent them down to be drowned, with not a single wager laid down. The rising waters, this melting, this sinking palace, this eternal domicile, I have drowned my father, my mother. He could see those cells, the black flood, the gouges in the walls where they had clawed at the very ends of those chains. He could see it all. And so they stood, silent, flesh rotted and bloated with gases, puddles of slime spreading round their white, wrinkled feet. A father on whose shoulders Rhulad had ridden, shrieking with laughter, a child to top his god as it ran down the strand with limitless power and strength, with the promise of surety like a gentle kiss on the child's brow. A mother, no, enough. I die and die. More deaths, yes, than anyone can imagine. I die and die, and I die, but where is my peace? See what awaits me? See them. Rhulad Sengar, Emperor of 1,000 deaths, sat alone on his throne, dreaming peace, but even death could not offer that. I mean, wow, Okay, so, what a moment, but let's kind of focus here for a second. What can we learn from this beautiful, tragic scene? Really, what I feel like Erikson has done here is to help paint this beautiful portrait of a man in pain. He's helping us to imagine this character grieving over the family he has lost through his own cruelty and malice and madness. That is, on the surface level, a summary of the scene, but then he goes through the list of imagined faces before him, commenting sort of through them on the pain and the horrors he put them through. And then in every instance, he puts up this sort of mirror for us, the readers, to see how pained and horrified Rhulad is himself by all of this. Makes us kind of question, okay, if people we might have wronged in the past, how much harsher do we imagine them being to us? If we are in this sort of throne room setting, if we can put ourselves in Rhulad's shoes, which I think Erikson makes it really easy to do. He makes this horrible, cruel emperor this really sympathetic character in passages like this. Anyway, that's a brief summary, touching lightly on theme, but now let's look at this a little more structurally. I mentioned the longer paragraphs and then that kind of like conclusive thesis statement for each of the characters, but if we weren't inside Rhulad's mind at all we would see, just, structurally, setting-wise, like thinking about how the scene's told to us, the point of view kind of aspects, all we would see of the scene is just this deranged, silent, lonely man covered in coins and wax, sitting alone on a throne in an empty throne room. We do, however, get to go inside his mind to that other throne room, the one full of family and close allies he has wronged. We go through all of them, and then before his mother and father address their concerns and judgments, of him, we step back slightly to a flashback of an actual scene, something that actually did happen, in which he's told his wanton, cruel jailing of his parents has now inadvertently led to their brutal deaths and drowning. And as readers, we can see what triggered this ritual self-hate, or this ritual of self-hate, and the ghosts of his past coming back to him and judging him, or rather, Rhulad judging himself through these mental projections of these ghosts. We can now see the moment, hearing this news of his parents, of what happened to his parents, that sent him spiraling into the scene that we were kind of brought into in the middle of. So with each person that comes forward, Erikson is just breaking our hearts again and again by showing us how Rhulad understands why all of these people should and would loathe him now. Or at least that's what Rhulad expects from them, regardless of what the reality of their situation is, how forgiving they might or might not be. And as readers, we can really logically follow along and say, yes, this makes sense for Fear, for Benedas, for Udinese, and so on. But his parents are about to step up. And we know two things at this point before we get the flashback. We know, one, his own mental projection of them will likely criticize him for distrusting them and locking them up in some other such cruelty. And two, in the backs of our minds, we know the water levels in the city have been rising. This sort of symbolic, dramatic, figurative raising of the stakes and tensions in the city throughout the whole book, and through this quick flashback to a real conversation, the reality of the situation dawns on us. And we feel all of that pain Rhulad is feeling, and the horror and self-loathing that sent him into this horrible fantasy of his. So then Rhulad Sengar knows what he's done to his loved ones, one and all, and he is stuck alone in pain with no escape from that loneliness or that pain. And as easy as it might be to blame the sword in his hand, the crippled god, the madness, etc., he is accepting the burden of all this guilt all on himself, on the shoulders of the young Rhulad before he died that first time, as opposed to the shoulders of the current Rhulad, Emperor of 1,000 Deaths, corrupted by all of this trauma, all of this pain. All of that, and I'm sure many more layers that I didn't touch on that might have resonated with any or all of you, all of that makes this a beautiful and painful scene, and one of my favorite moments in the whole series. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and suggest or share my Malazan analysis video series with your friends. It would really mean a lot to me. As always, please comment down below what you loved or hated about this scene, and any places where our interpretation of things might differ. The next video in this series will, I'm sorry to say, also be about a heartbreaking scene, as I am moving on to Toll the Hound's Book 8 to look at a scene in which the young Harlow paints a beautiful picture of the city Darujistan, the city of blue fire, and the wonderful mothers within that city. Thanks as always for watching. Have a good one. Bye.